Alright, look, we all knew this day was coming. If anything, all of Generation 9 VGC up to this day was just preparation. The coming of the new year meant the Chosen One was finally about to make his return. Would the world be ready? It turns out, yeah, they actually were. We are, of course, talking about the return of Incineroar, which finally made its hotly anticipated comeback to VGC in the first tournament of 2024, held the first weekend of January in Portland, Oregon. To say that people were excited for Incineroar's return isn't quite right. They were more like nervous, more like terrified actually. It has everything you could ask for in a doubles format. Bulk to survive just about anything, intimidate to stop physical attackers, fake out to steal free turns for its partner, U-turn and parting shot as pivot options to reset and do it all over again. With the massive power of Flare Blitz, even its comparatively mid attacking stats can be put to good use. Many assumed it would immediately ascend the throne in VGC 2024, just as it has done in every year it was legal since 2018. But then the numbers were crunched at Portland, and Incineroar was on a mere 42% of teams, well behind Fluttermane's 60%. Surely this was just a case of Optimus building for a new meta and hoping the cat couldn't rule again, right? The Incineroars would definitely go on to dominate day 2, right? Incineroar's usage rate dropped by 10 points from day 1 to day 2, and their ranks just kept thinning out as each round progressed. By top 8, only 1 remained, on a very unique team also featuring Screamtail and Reggie Drago, piloted by Anton Galkin. Anton would bow out at top 4 to the eventual winner of the event, Alex Underhill. And while Alex's team didn't have Incineroar, it did have 2 Pokemon new to Regulation F. The much hyped Paradox form of Raikou, Raging Bolt, and a far less hyped fire type than Incineroar, Entei. Okay, it's one thing to lose to a Paradox Pokemon, the icons of power creep in Generation 9, but Entei? Some old washed up fire type outperformed Incineroar? This is your GOAT? What happened? It really is no exaggeration to call Incineroar the GOAT of VGC. Sorry, GoGoat. According to Limitless VGC's database, Incineroar has earned more money for its trainers than any Pokemon in the history of VGC, and by quite a bit. Incineroar's whopping $435,000 in career earnings has Amoonguss beat by over 100 grand. Ever since Sun and Moon unleashed Incineroar onto the Pokemon universe, there's only been one format in which it hasn't dominated. Its very first, VGC 2017. Incineroar's hidden ability wasn't unlocked yet, and with the standard fire starter ability Blaze, it just didn't have the juice. It had only 5 major appearances according to Limitless VGC's database, and one of them came from VGC's most notoriously creative team builder, Mr. Pachirisu himself, Sejun Park. The Incineroar, naturally, wasn't even the wildest thing on that team. Yeah, that's an Eevee. Extreme Evo Boost, a Z-move exclusive to Eevee that provided a double Omni boost, was certainly something, enough to power Sejun to a 3rd place finish at Korean Nationals. As soon as Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon introduced the hidden abilities for the starters, there was no looking back. Now with Intimidate, the same ability that powered Arcanine and Landorus T to 4th and 5th on that earning list respectively, Incineroar became the single easiest Pokemon to slap onto a team. It already had a good enough defensive stat line and the elite move Fake Out that helped it earn those few solid placements in the Blaze era. With Intimidate, Incineroar suddenly became one of the most valuable utility Pokemon in the game. Get an Intimidate off, Fake Out for chip damage, U-turn out, and repeat, all while the other slot is free to dish out damage or set up. It's as rock solid of a game plan as you can find in VGC. And that remained true regardless of generational gimmicks or available teammates. It was amazing in VGC 2018 with the expanded Pokédex of the Ultra games taking up all 4 slots at Worlds and appearing on 6 of the top 8 teams. Incineroar arguably got even better in the restricted formats of the Ultra series in 2019, where it was practically required to stem the ridiculously high power level of these formats. They were overrun with legendaries, even legalizing the absurd Primal Groudon and Kyogre for the Ultra series, the format that included the 2019 World Championships. How about Mega Rayquaza? Yeah, pretty cool guy. Didn't even reach half as many top 8s as this one really angry cat. Incineroar had to wait for the Isle of Armor DLC to make an impact in Generation 8, and also arrived while offline tournaments were shut down due to the pandemic. Not even that could keep Incineroar down though. The highest profile official tournament of 2020 was the Players' Cup. With Worlds and the regional circuit cancelled, Players' Cup stepped in to fill the void. Thousands of players played in an online ladder, who were then filtered down to a few hundred top finishers from each region. From there, double elimination tournaments from each region filtered down to a global top 16. The first 2 phases were played prior to Incineroar's release, in a world where Arcanine was the top Intimidate user. But the Players' Cup Finals top 16 bracket allowed those finalists to submit a new team list for the final phase, which would be played in Sword and Shield's freshly minted Series 5. This format welcomed the new Pokemon from the Isle of Armor DLC. 12 of the top 16 at the Players' Cup Finals brought Incineroar. The 4 who didn't all finished outside of top 8. Even though Incineroar wasn't the greatest at exploiting the Dynamax mechanic, and its fakeouts couldn't force Dynamaxed opponents to flinch, it was still incredibly strong in a Dynamax meta. The addition of Parting Shot gave it both further damage mitigation and another way to pivot out and reset fakeout. It was bulky enough to shrug off many max attacks and stall out Dynamax turns, and maxing in front of Incineroar just to get hit with a Parting Shot was one of the worst feelings in Generation 8 VGC. December 2020's Players' Cup 2 was played in a much tougher meta. By this point, the Crown Tundra Pokédex had been integrated into VGC, featuring returning monsters like the Genies and new foes like Regieleki and Spectrier. It was a bit tougher for Incineroar to hang there. It didn't flood the top 8 like it did at Players' Cup 1, but guess who won? Wolfie, of course, but also Incineroar. When offline play returned in 2022, it brought back the restricted formats. We already knew Incineroar could hang with the likes of Kyogre and Groudon and the other older box legendaries from the Generation 7 Ultra series. But what about Generation 8's new additions? Meta threat after meta threat folded in the face of the likes of Zacian and Calyrex Shadow Rider. But you practically couldn't build a Pokemon better suited to deal with these two than Incineroar. Its Intimidate nullified Zacian's Intrepid Sword ability, and its typing blocked either Zacian or Calyrex from trying to simply sweep with their ridiculous signature moves. Incineroar was one of the rare Pokemon able to resist both Behemoth Blade and Astral Barrage. Australia had the honor of welcoming back regional championship play in this new meta back in 2022. Teams could include up to 2 restricted Pokemon. If one of your other 4 wasn't Incineroar, you were pretty much throwing. It was on 7 of the top 8 teams, pairing well with pretty much every legendary imaginable. Zacian? Check. Kyogre? Check. Groudon? Check. Yveltal, Calyrex Ice Rider, Dialga, and Palkia all also saw play alongside Incineroar. The utility and bulk it provided made every team better. That meta didn't find any answers as it developed, and it actually had quite a bit of time to develop. By the time the North America International Championships rolled around that summer, nothing had changed. Once again, 7 of the top 8 teams featured Incineroar, with only 1 legendary core repeated, Groudon and Calyrex Shadow Rider. That was the last chance before Worlds, and in his last shot at Generation 8, Incineroar once again dominated, showing up on 7 of the 8 Worlds teams and reinforcing its position as the GOAT. All of this is to say, Incineroar is judged by a different standard. When this Pokemon is legal, the expectation is that it will be winning tournaments, that it's a good bet to clear 50% usage, and on teams seriously competing to win the whole thing, it is practically a requirement. Why wouldn't Generation 9 be more of the same? Well, Portland showed that there were actually a few reasons why. Urshifu Rapid Strike wasn't nearly as prevalent as it was throughout Regulations D and E, but it was still one of the most commonly used Pokemon in Regulation F's debut regional. Intimidate doesn't affect its Surging Strike, so Incineroar would pretty much be forced to Terra Grass if it wants to stay on the field in that matchup, or be teamed with an Ogerpon Wellspring that can eat Surging Strikes through its combo of Water Absorb and Follow Me. It also doesn't have the greatest matchup into Flutter Mane, which once again looks to be the ruler of the format. Incineroar takes neutral damage from its ridiculously strong fairy attacks, and you can't stop it via a fake out without this kind of foresight.
First.
But it also got the speed boost. That's another big factor as well. So.
But the fake out! The call to fake out into the Flutter Mane!
Oh yeah, this Flutter Mane is about to enter a world of hurt. Fake out and the Moonblast is enough to drop it in turn number 1. Now it's all up to Torkoal. Let's see what you got, because that is a big loss for Joe in turn number 1.
But the biggest issue Incineroar faces in this meta might just be the core of the team that won Portland. The combination of Chien-Pao and Dragonite has been present since the Ice Legendary's arrival in Regulation C. The strategy's persistence through Regulations D and E owes a lot to Dragonite's ability Inner Focus. While Hisuian Arcanine was making its run through Regulation E, winning 6 regionals and the Latin America International Championships, Dragonite's Inner Focus allowed it to operate at full power through Arcanine's Intimidates. Terra Normal Extreme Speed is powerful, but it becomes much less impressive after an Intimidate. Prior to Entei's release in the Indigo Disc, if you wanted another option for Inner Focus Extreme Speed, you had to go with Lucario, whose bulk isn't going to let you swing as many times as you need to. That is, for the record, where Entei came in. At 115, its attack barely beats out Lucario's, but Entei's legendary stat spread gives it a huge leg up in HP, as well as better defenses and speed. It won't hit as hard as Dragonite, no, but with an Assault Vest, it can play a more flexible attacking role, soaking up hits, dishing out burns through Sacred Fire, and picking up KOs when necessary with extreme speed. The tools that have powered Incineroar's VGC career are neutralized by this core. Inner Focus doesn't just block Incineroar's Intimidate, but also renders Fake Out useless against both of the attackers Chien-Pao is looking to buff. To make matters worse, all 3 of these Pokemon all have options to hit Incineroar in its standard Fire Dark form or most common Terra-type Grass for super effective damage. Dragonite has Stomping Tantrum Aerial Ace, Chien-Pao Sacred Sword Ice Spinner, and Entei Stomping Tantrum Sacred Fire. Go with a Terra type like Water, and you're still going to have to survive full power boosted extreme speeds. There is no easy way out. Colin Hire piloted a 99% similar version of Alex's team to a top 8 finish, and the pair combined to go 10-2 in sets against Incineroar for the weekend. Both losses were to teams that could operate well without Incineroar. Joshua Denk beat Alex with a hard Sun team revolving around Torkoal, Jumpluff, and a bunch of Photosynthesis users, and Colin's Incineroar loss came to Anton's Regidrago team in top 8, which Alex was able to take down one round later. Lots of players, for very good reason, assumed that Incineroar was going to centralize whatever format it joined whenever it was released into Scarlet and Violet. Instead, look at how its debut compares to other Pokemon who have joined VGC this generation. At Portland, Incineroar became one of 25 Pokemon to join Scarlet and Violet VGC since Regulation B and finish in top 8 in its first legal tournament. Here they all are, organized by best finish and top usage rate within top 128 finishers. Incineroar was pretty highly used in its debut, but it was nothing in comparison to the way that Fluttermane and Iron Hands ruled Regulation B on their release. It also didn't measure up to Urshifu Rapid Strike's dominance in Regulation D, which is even more impressive given that Urshifu has to compete with its other, also broken form for team spots. Only a fool who doesn't know their VGC history, me, would write Incineroar off after just 1 month. But the numbers are hard to ignore. The Incineroar we've seen to open up Generation 9 isn't looking like the cat that ruled the game in Generations 7 and 8. He's got some competition this time around. Alright, there were 2 more regionals held in January to close out the first month of official Regulation F play, first in Charlotte and then across the pond in Liverpool. And guess who walked away with the trophy? Wolfie, of course, but also Incineroar. And no, it wasn't Wolf himself who won in Liverpool, but champion Antonio Sanchez, who used Wolf's exact team to take a second straight regional for Incineroar and restore order after the chaos that was Portland. Wolf himself was not having any of this anti-Incineroar nonsense, as he told everybody after one of his many winners interviews in Charlotte.
You know, it's funny. People are online and they are being blasphemous and they are saying, oh, Incineroar is not that good. Look, its usage isn't that high. Like, wow, Incineroar didn't even win the first tournament. And I'm here to tell you right now, I'm gonna need a lot more proof before I start believing that. I think Incineroar is the king, and I think he's back, baby.
So, was everything we said earlier wrong? Are we already back in an Incineroar golden age? Well, not so fast. Only one other player made top 8 with Incineroar at Charlotte, Neil Patel, whom Wolf dispatched in the first elimination round. Incineroar ranks 6th in usage among Pokemon on teams receiving championship points, that's top 256, and it was still just 6th if you looked at the 75 teams to make day 2. It did have a stronger performance at Liverpool though, where 4 Incineroars made top 8 and it ranked 3rd in usage on teams that received championship points. 92 of the top 256 used Incineroar at Liverpool compared to just 63 at Charlotte. But this still pales in comparison to the usage Incineroar saw in some of the formats we looked at earlier. After a full month of Regulation F play, it sure didn't look like we were going to be repeating those days of top 8s featuring 6, 7, or even 8 Incineroars. But Wolf and Antonio have definitely proven that the GOAT is not washed. It's more accurate to say that the rest of the meta has finally reached a power level where teams finally have legitimate options and answers to beat Incineroar. There are so many strong teams and concepts in this regulation that, unlike previous years, you aren't throwing if you leave Incineroar off your team. But wash though? You're gonna have to do a little better than that to keep this cat down. Hey, thank you so much for watching, and if you like this type of content, please be sure to subscribe to Beastcoast Pokemon.